Okay, so thought I would talk about shame. Fun topic, but important. So first thing I thought I would do was define shame relative to something in the framework of compassionate communication we call the 4 alarms. So define it by making distinctions. The 4 alarms in compassionate communication are particular feelings that are hopefully waking us up to a certain kind of thinking. So the 4 alarms are shame, guilt, anger, and depression. Or some version of depression could be small along the continuum, right? So with each one of those 4 alarms feelings, there's a basic thought present. So with anger, it's you should or shouldn't be, right? It's the finger pointing outward, or it should or shouldn't be as it is. And then with guilt, it's I should or shouldn't have behaved in a particular way. So it's a behavior-based thinking. And then with depression or shutdown, it's I should or shouldn't be having a particular experience. So that's that very pushing away of experience. And then with shame, it's identity-based. I should or shouldn't be who I am. So it's moving against a sense of identity or self. When I've offered classes on shame, I get people writing me emails saying, well, I've really liked your classes, but I don't think I have any shame. So what that tells me is that shame is often running underground. Especially when shame is chronic rather than acute. So chronic shame has usually built up habitual ways of dealing with it or keeping your distance from it. So you can recognize it then not by itself, but by the things we use to protect ourselves from shame. And those are your cues or your indicators. So some of the more obvious signs, when you hear yourself boasting or when you notice yourself trying to prove something, like how much you know or how good you are at something, like you're trying to push that forward, that's usually a battle with shame that's happening behind the scenes there. Anger is probably the most common way to mediate shame or get away from shame, because anger keeps you active and alive. It's closer to life than shame in a funny sort of way, because at least with anger, you're in some way, even if it might be tragic, fighting for your life. You think you are, right? So in that way, it's adaptive. Yeah, or it may have been adaptive at one time to prevent you from becoming suicidal. Of course, at some point, we're not facing the same number of threats, but the anger habit is still alive. So then we need to look at it differently. Let's see, what else did I have here about symptoms of shame? A more subtle symptom of shame can be just that you've exiled some part of yourself. So when someone has exiled big parts of themselves or their experience, then what you might notice from the outside is a sense of disconnect or numbness or vacancy. All those can be symptoms that shame is underground somehow and is being managed. And judgment, of course, right? Shame is probably the most toxic judgment you can make for yourself. So when you're judging who someone else is, right, that's the inverse of shame. That's a symptom that it might be lurking here on the inside. Acute shame is, of course, much more easy to catch. So you probably recognize the symptoms like a sudden heaviness or a collapsing inward, or a sense of being paralyzed or completely shutting down to yourself and to life in a way. It might, acute shame, you might notice impulses to hide, to go way back to your comfort zone, to leave whatever challenge you were up to and go back and do whatever that thing is where you know you're safe and comfortable. Acute shame is also often accompanied by obsessive thinking, right? You obsessively go over what you did again and again and how bad you are for doing that. Regardless of whether it's acute shame or chronic shame, its medicine is to be brought out into the light with others who can hold compassionate presence for you. That allows you to integrate the experiences that triggered the shame. It loosens shame's hold on you. It just can't quite survive in that light of compassion. That's kind of like, that's kind of like the big step in healing. So you may not jump to, oh, I'll heal my shame by revealing it all to the people I trust. That's a lot to ask of yourself. You might want to work your way up to that. So baby steps could be just allowing yourself to engage a little bit more. Yeah, if you engage a little bit more in the presence of people who support you, you get to have this experience of, I'm showing up and nothing bad is happening. Yeah? We need to collect a lot of those to counteract the intensity that was there when shame was created. Other baby steps are to share little bits of vulnerability with someone you trust. Yeah? So that when that vulnerability could come out and it gets received with a big heart and a friendly face, then you start to shift inside. Like some part of you says, maybe I'm okay. Yeah? And we want to grow that voice. That's what I had on shame for today.